So let's work on one example here in which we are going to be asked to do a quadratic regression given a table of values. So example 3 says that the table below shows the height h of t in meters of an object that is thrown off the top of a building t seconds after it is thrown. And notice how they then give us some values for t and for the height. Part A asks us to use the calculator to do a quadratic regression and express the height of the object as a function of the number of seconds that have passed since the object was thrown. So in other words, we want to find a quadratic equation that we can use to model this scatter plot. And we're going to use the TI84. Now I have a TI84 Plus, so it should be similar to your TI84. And so the first thing we want to do, of course, is graph this scatter plot. We want to see that scatter plot. So let's go ahead and enter that into the TI. Okay, so I'm going to turn my TI on, and then I'm going to go in the Stat menu and Edit. And notice that I've got some lists, some input into my list. So I'm going to go ahead and clear those, and I do that by using the up arrow and then hitting clear and enter. And then I'm going to use my left arrow and up arrow to go to list 1, and again hit clear and enter. Okay, so now my lists are ready for me to input my data. And in column list 1, I'm going to go ahead and put my independent variable, or my input variable, which you know is our times. So we're going to put just enter 0.5, type it in, and then just hit the enter key until you type in or enter in all of these values. Okay, so we're going to do that first. All right, great. So there are all my t values, my seconds, after the ball is thrown. And now I need to come over here to the right hand side and input in all these values using the same method. So I will use my right arrow to get here to list 1, and then I'm going to enter in my my y values, or my h values, right? My height values. Okay, so notice how I've entered in my values for t and h, right? Okay, the next thing we want to do is, before we calculate the actual quadratic regression, let's go ahead and set up the scales of our axes, right? Because our input axis is going to be a different range of numbers as opposed to our output. So let's go ahead and go to the window key. So here are the values that I used. I had my input scale for t go from 0 to 4 with in increments of half a second. And then I did my output range going from 80 to about 110, and I used a y scale of 5. Okay. So now let's go ahead and turn on our stat plot. Let's make sure that our scatter plot is on. So I'm going to actually come here to the y equals screen, and then you want to make sure that this plot 1 over here is highlighted like mine is. Okay, if it isn't, you just use your up arrow and then just hit enter. Okay, so I just turned it off, mine off, but I'm going to go ahead and enter again, and it just turns this back on. And then I'm going to use my down arrow, and now I want to look at this graph. So I'm going to go to the graph, and so here is our scatter plot. And can you see kind of a parabola shape there, a downward parabola shape there? So that quadratic regression will give us a model of what this parabola's equation, the one that models this data best, might be. So we're going to do that next. So now what we want to do is, let's go back to the home screen. So I'm going to go back to the home screen, and I'm going to come over here to stat, and then I'm going to use the arrow to go to calc, and option 5 is our quadratic regression. So I'm going to go ahead and type 5. Okay, and now my this screen might look a little different than yours if you have the regular TI84. Here I'm telling the calculator that my x's are stored in list 1 and my y's are stored in list 2. And I have a place here in my menu where I can tell the calculator that I want to see the graph stored in Y1. So I'm going to go ahead and go here to Store Regression Equation. And then using my alpha and my F4 key, so that's alpha trace, I'm going to pick Y1 here. Now, if you are using a regular TI84, you're going to do something slightly different. I want to tell you to go to our other videos where you were shown how to do that, okay? And then I'm just going to calculate. Okay, so my calculator has now given me the quadratic equation. Okay, so here are the coefficients A, B, and C that I'm going to use in my regression. And wow, R squared is 1. So that means we have a very good match here. Okay, so let's write the answer down. So expressing the height as a function of the number of seconds after the object was thrown, we would write h of t is equal to negative 4.9 t squared plus 26.8 t plus 70. Because again, our input variable is t, and then our regression calculation gave us the coefficients of t squared and t, and then a constant, right? Okay, now let's look at question B, which says, using your quadratic regression, so using this quadratic equation that we got in part A, how high will the object be 2.7 seconds after it is thrown? So notice that in part B, we are given the t value, right? T equals 2.7, and we want to find the h value. So we want to find h of 2.7. Okay, so I'm going to show you two ways to do this. I'm going to just use the definition, the function notation here, and you know that this means that we're just going to substitute in 2.7 for t in our equation. So you have a choice here. You can do that, right? Okay, we can use our calculator for that. So let's try that. So I'm going to go back to my home screen here. Just go right in and type in. All right, so I got 106. The height of the ball is 106.639, and it's meters. We were told that the height was calculated in meters, right? Because I said it right here. Okay, that's good. Or here's the other way that we could do the same. We could use our table, right? Because we have stored in our y1 value in the calculator. We have this equation already stored. So we could go to, we're going to ask the function to evaluate this value, okay, for us. So what you want to do first is you're going to look for the table set menu here. So use your blue key and go to table set. All right. And what I want you to do is that where the independent variable is, so that's your t value, that's your input, we're going to change that to ask. Okay, so just use your right arrow and move it over to the word ask, and then just hit enter. And then I want you to go to the table now. So I'm going to go second table, and notice how we have our x and our y1, and it's this is blank, and it's waiting for you to give an x value, and it will give you back the y value. So in our case, that's t and h. So we had 2.7. So we're going to put 2.7 and then hit enter, and then notice that we get, it says here 106.64 rounded, right? But I went ahead and just moved my cursor there, and down here I can get the 106.639 meters. So two ways for you to arrive at part B. Okay, now let's do part C. This is the one students sometimes have trouble with. This says, use your quadratic regression. How long will it take the object to reach 34 meters? So this time we know the h. We know h is 34 meters. Find t. All right, so I'm going to show you two ways with this. I'm going to show you with the calculator using our table, and one with the algebra. Okay, so let's do the algebra part first. So this means we're going to take our quadratic equation, all right, our regression equation here, and we're going to set it to 34. So that's our h, and we're looking for t. You've done previous work in this module to solve quadratic equations like this. And you know that what we're going to need to do is get a 0 on one side and then just use our quadratic formula, right? So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to subtract the 34, and then we will use our quadratic formula and our calculator. So what is that? 36 equals 0. So I'm going to go t equals the opposite of b, plus or minus, big square root there, b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Okay, so let's take this to the calculator and find this answer. And I'm going to actually go for the two negatives here. I have a negative denominator. Do you see that? And my time has to be positive. So I'm going to go for these two negatives right here. Okay, so let me do that in the calculator now. Okay, so I want you to see my work in the calculator. I went ahead and just did the numerator and then took that answer and divided it by the denominator. And so I have that the time is 6.585 seconds, right? It takes the ball 6.588 seconds to reach the height of 34 meters. Okay, now let's show you the second way where we're going to use our calculator and the graph of the regression to get this answer. And that way you can check your answer or you have a choice, right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to our y equal menu, and notice how our y1 has stored in it the regression equation, but we're going to go to y2. And in y2, we're going to put our y value, which was 34 meters. And what that's going to do when we go to the graph is that you're going to have your parabola here, okay? And then you're going to have, and the reason we can't see our horizontal line, our y equals 34, has to do how we set the window. So let's go back to window and see, notice how I set the minimum y value here, height value at 80. So I need that to go down. Let's change that to 30 this time. And I'm going to change this scale just to make it okay. And so now let's go back to the graph, see if we can see our y equals 34. Not quite yet. Okay, so here I go. Oh, that's because my X scale is off. All right, so let's set that scale, go up to 10 seconds here. Okay, that's way better. So now we can see here where our two graphs meet, and we're trying to find what that point of intersection is so that we can read off of this point the X value, which is our time, okay? So now is when we're going to go to use the calc menu over here. And so you're going to go second trace, and we want to find the intersection, so that's 5, okay? And then just hit enter 3 times because it's trying to guess at an answer until you see where it says intersection. And now notice how we have the 6.585 seconds as well. So 2 ways for you to answer this question. Hope this helps.